Hi, I'm Douglas Shaw, and in this video, I'm going to give you my top 3 tips to get your bike set up just right. Tip number 1, go and see a professional. My first tip is quite an obvious one, really, and it's just to kind of make the point that it really is worth choosing a professional to get your bike fit off you. So here's the IBFI, the International Bike Fitting Institute's website, and they've got a lot of great features on their website in terms of news. You can identify expertise. They give you a lot of guides as a client, and of course they're contactable. They're just based down south in England, so they've got lots of great sections for fitters, for cyclists, um, other sections as well, how to join. But their most important one really for you would be find a fitter. So if you click on the link, it takes you up to this map function where you can select really the level of bike fit that you're after. So level 1 would be quite a basic fit, up to level 4, which would be sort of an internationally recognised bike fitter. So if you use this map function, you can scroll to anywhere in the world that you are, and we're based in Edinburgh, so I'll just zoom in a bit, and there I am, level 3 bike fitter. It tells you a lot about the experience of the fitter, what they have in terms of tech, and it gives you a link to their site. It's maybe important to note that there are a lot of great bike fitters out in the world that aren't on this page, and so maybe the best thing you can do would be to ask fellow members of your cycling club or friends that have had fits before what their experience was like before you just make a booking. Because quite often the fit that you can receive on the day isn't necessarily the fit that is advertised. At least on this website you'll find a fitter of a certain standard if you're totally stuck. Tip number 2, consider doing some stretching. So my second tip is really focusing on stretching. So if you'll have a look at this one, I've got the client on his hands and knees, and I'm getting him to round his lower back and push it up to the ceiling. So at that point, he's already feeling a stretch. And if you do the opposite, so sticking your belly button down to the floor as much as you can, you'll feel a stretch in your abs just underneath your rib cage. So to progress the stretch, what I've done is I've got him to put his right hand on top of his left and move his backside over towards his ankles. Now as he moves back, you start feeling a stretch right down the right hand side of your lat and right into your lower back. And you can see me repping the movement here. If you do it between 8 to 10 times, you'll definitely feel it easier at the end of the stretch rather than at the start. So the second stretch that I've got is a lunge stretch. In the lunge stretch, you'll notice it in the hip. Starting off on both your knees, you're putting one of your feet in front of you, moving your knee forward in line so it's over the top of your ankle, and pushing your hips forward. To progress this stretch, you can also raise your hand on the same side as your hip, and you'll feel it right down at the front of your abs into your hip. These stretching tips are especially good if you seem to struggle with a lot of pressure on the front of the saddle. Quite often, even without changing the position, the pressure points, especially on soft tissue, can be massively reduced just by doing a couple of the right stretches. Tip number 3, use feedback loops. So my second tip really focuses around looking at feedback loops that you can do by yourself. Now, the hardest thing really when you're trying to sort out your own position is you can't really look at yourself. So what can you do that'll give you meaningful feedback on your position without having to look? And feedback loops is a great way. So the first one I've got is just by getting Steph to unclip her left foot and just resting it on the turbo and just backpedaling. So you'll see that over the top of the pedal stroke, she's really becoming jammed up over the top. Now, this could be for several reasons. For example, the saddle might be too low, the cleats could be too far forward, and if you'll have another look, she's pedaling forward now and jamming up over the top as well. This is just a really great indication that the saddle's just not exactly how it should be, or potentially the functionality of the ankle or the hip itself isn't quite right. Why don't you go and stretch your calves off against the wall, or maybe even just stretch out your quad and see if this backpedaling becomes much easier. What you might also find is that your pedal stroke somehow seems smoother, but that kind of feeds back more to my second tip. But really, in this case, raising the saddle and all of a sudden your leg goes much smoother over the top of the pedal stroke, well, that's going to be your first clue. Another tip could be leveling off the saddle, which takes me kind of nicely into my second feedback loop, which would be just literally sitting up on the saddle whilst pedaling forwards. Now, A good tip here is to make sure that your bike's level first. As you push up, you have to be conscious of a couple of things. So, can you push up without a real sensation of slipping forwards? And once you're actually sitting up on the saddle with your hands off the bars, do you feel like you're having to really resist the saddle? For instance, the saddle is trying to really push you forwards and you're having to really lean back to compensate against that. Whatever you do, don't make sure that you point the saddle up. If you level the saddle off and get back on and try it again, and you feel a little more stable, then obviously that's a great step forwards. However, if the saddle feels too high at this point, and it didn't a minute ago, the best thing to do would be put it down a little bit and keep trying until you have a good balance of feeling planted in the saddle, so you're not slipping forwards, and also having a great sensation in your legs in terms of a full leg extension without feeling too straight out the knee. What you might start feeling if the saddle gets too high at this point is pressure on the soft tissue on the saddle, or if it's too low, pressure on your knees down the bottom. Over the next few videos, I really want to start getting more into feedback loops because I think they're such an important tool for you as a client and also for me as a bike fitter to really start to get to the bottom of where you need to be on the bike. So if you like the video, make sure you like, share and subscribe and tune in regularly to make sure that you're up to date with the best bike fit tips on YouTube. Thank you very much.